Ellis Island, a place where over 12 million children, adults, and families pass through to get to America, the land of opportunity. Ellis Island was initially a small barrack named Fort Gibson. Soon the island was enlarged to be used for the purpose of immigration in 1892. Then, in 1897, Ellis Island was burned to the ground and the building along with the immigration records were lost. After the fire in 1897, Ellis Island was rebuilt and fireproof. This reconstruction included a main building, kitchen, laundry building, and powerhouse. Along with that, a new hospital and surgeon's house located on the new second island were created. And soon, with more and more immigrants, a third island was added, with a contagious disease hospital. The main island got a new third floor and baggage room, while Island 2 got more improvements on their hospitals. After adding a new ferry house and a grass mall, Ellis Island was finally finished with its improvements. But from the beginning of Ellis Island, passengers had the same steps to get into America. For all but first-class passengers, who got to be citizens almost immediately, second and third-class passengers had to pass medical and legal examinations to become American citizens. Upon arrival to Ellis Island, passengers were examined and processed to see if they would be able to become part of America or sent back to their countries. First, they would be examined for any obvious physical ailments, known as the 6-second medical exam. This was the beginning of their journey. If they did not pass, they had to be sent to a full, in-depth medical exam, or marked with chalk signifying this need. About 1 in every 5 immigrants were marked. But if they passed, they were brought to the Great Hall, a processing room. Here, hundreds of immigrants waited to be asked 29 questions, and the wait on average took 3 to 4 hours. They were asked names, occupations, and the amount of money they had brought with them, among many other questions, and the past immigrants were off to their new lives, either in New York City or other areas of the United States. But around 2% of immigrants were denied access to the United States for several reasons, including health, mental or physical, and/or a criminal record. But other immigrants did not have such an easy journey as laid out here, and had to wait several hours or even days to be processed or receive a full medical exam. They were put into dormitories according to sex, each with over 600 cots, and in the case of many people, they were awaiting medical examination. Here the doctors at Ellis Island would work to treat or even cure patients with every kind of disease, from malaria to cholera. Unlike many places, the passengers were given an opportunity to heal and get rid of their medical ailments before being sent back to their countries. This was the responsibility of the workers of Ellis Island, to protect current American citizens from disease and to cure patients at Ellis Island. About 9 out of every 10 patients were cured and allowed to enter America, and around 300 doctors and nurses were hired at the hospitals in Ellis Island and were responsible for curing patients with physical ailments and looking after and treating patients with mental ailments. The Health Board of Ellis Island was split among 22 buildings on the 2 islands, which contained over 450 beds in the Contagious Disease Hospital, 30 beds in the Psychiatric Wing, 4 operating rooms, and 1 morgue. These contagious disease hospitals dealt with every kind of disease imaginable, from tropical diseases to the more common ones, such as tuberculosis or cholera. Over 10,000 patients were treated in the hospitals, with only about 3,500 deaths. But around 300 babies were born at these hospitals and named after doctors out of respect for the treatment they had been given and the right of proper medical treatment they were now entitled to in America. Although the psychiatric wards were not so perfect, many people were falsely diagnosed because of language barriers and the anxiousness of their arrivals. Fiorella H. LaGuardia, who worked as a translator at Ellis Island, wrote that many immigrants classified as mental cases were classified so because of ignorance, the ignorance of both immigrants and the so-called experts. But even so, Ellis Island, at its busiest point, was one of the highest medical facilities in America, with new medical technology and a place that would cure people with even the strangest of diseases. The people responsible for curing these diseases gave immigrants the right to medical help that they in some cases had never been given before. The Ellis Island Hospital was eventually closed in the 1930s upon the tightening immigration requirements and the decline of the use of Ellis Island. Another responsibility of Ellis Island was to control immigration into America. Due to the influx of immigration to America, Ellis Island was created to keep criminals, diseased people, and people ineligible of citizenship from entering the United States of America. They were given the job to test and examine people, to keep current citizens safe, and to ensure national security. They were given the job to ask the 29 questions and deem if people were allowed to enter, or sadly give the hard news that people were not allowed to start a new life after Ellis Island. These responsibilities were not easy. They were meant to communicate with people from all over the world. With language barriers, that was not an easy feat. My great-grandfather, Jose Suarez Temprano, was an immigrant through Ellis Island. My grandmother told me stories of his journey here, and she now recollects that his journey was filled with helping the Ellis Island workers communicate.
Talk about my father, your great-grandfather, coming through Ellis Island in 1927 from Spain, and being stuck at Ellis Island all day in his underwear. He was very embarrassed because he never faced anything like that, and they had sent him through a series of examinations: his eyes, his teeth, his general health, and he was obviously very healthy. And then they found out that he could speak several different languages, so they kept him longer so that he could interpret from the other people that were standing in line waiting to go through Ellis Island to come to the United States. And the reason that he was able to speak these different languages is because he was the oldest in his family. His father had passed away, so he had to get a job. He got a job on a merchant ship, and they had people, men from all over the world working the ship. So he had a very good ear for languages, and he was able to communicate with all these men who taught them their native language. So he spoke Spanish, English, Portuguese, Greek, French, Italian. Now, it's not like he could sit down and write in these languages, but he could converse back and forth. And he was the interpreter, and he was there all day long interpreting. And the other immigrants felt more comfortable speaking with him because he too was an immigrant. So they felt very comfortable speaking with him. So, and he was a little better educated than the other immigrants. So therefore they relied on him to process these other immigrants.
Since these responsibilities were not easy to deal with, as mentioned here, the immigrants were largely relied on to help be translators and help with the duty of speaking and communicating with other immigrants. This practice helped to ensure the right of freedom would be guaranteed for the majority of immigrants that passed through Ellis Island. While the immigrants stayed at Ellis Island, they were about to be given their inalienable rights, as laid out by our forefathers. But these rights would not be possible for the immigrants without the workers at Ellis Island doing their duties and fulfilling their responsibilities to secure immigration, to keep current U.S. citizens safe, and to cure people of illnesses at Ellis Island to help them gain their freedom. Ellis Island is a place with rich history, one that about 40% of Americans can trace ancestry back to. It was a place that gave many rights, but had many responsibilities to go along with it.